Welcome to the Aligned Ambition podcast. I'm your host, Pooja Venkatraman. I'm a double Harvard grad, former BCG consultant, and now an executive coach for high achievers. On this podcast, we are going to tackle the 4 key things that you need to figure out in order to live a life of aligned ambition. Those 4 things are stress, productivity, performance, and purpose. We are going to make sure that you're driving your car in the direction that you actually want to go. That is the purpose part. We're also going to make sure that your progress along the road is consistent and effective. That's the productivity and performance part. And we're going to make sure that the fuel you're pouring into your tank isn't so noxious that it's filling your car with fumes and making the whole ride miserable. That is the stress part. Because if you can tackle those 4 things, stress, productivity, performance, and purpose, you can build the life and the career that you actually want. Not the life you think you're supposed to have, not the life that burns you out or doesn't fit quite right, but the life you actually want. One that fulfills your biggest ambitions and unleashes your fullest potential without sacrificing your sanity, your relationships, your authenticity, or your paycheck. A life that feels as good on the inside as it looks on the outside. That's what aligned ambition is all about. Let's get started. If you are a high achiever who knows that something needs to change in your career or in your life, you know that something is not quite working to the point that you're even considering leaving your job, right? Like leaving your job is actually fully on the table. You're like the friction, the misalignment, the something that's not working here is painful enough that I'm even considering making a massive change, like changing my job. But at the same time, you don't have enough clarity and conviction and confidence to actually pull the trigger, right? You feel kind of stuck. You're like, something's not working to the point that I'm really considering making a serious change, but I also am not actually pulling the trigger on that change. I still feel a little confused, a little conflicted, a little stuck in exactly what that change should be. Maybe I shouldn't even change my job. Like, what should I do next, etc. If you're in that tug of war spot, right? Something's not working, but I'm also not totally clear enough to like actually pull the trigger and like fully go for whatever the change might be. When you're in that spot, I want to tell you about a subtle thought pattern that might be happening that you may not even realize is happening, but actually holds you back. This is something that I have to point out to clients, right? Like clients very rarely, I think never have actually come to me and said, hey, this is what I think is happening. It's something where I'll hear them talk and I'll be like, is this what's happening in the background? I'm kind of picking this up like in the subtext of what you're saying. And then they're like, oh my gosh, you're totally right. So I want to share this with you, this subtle thought pattern that you might not even realize is happening. But once I articulate it, if it's you, you'll be like, oh my God, that's actually what it is. So the subtle thought pattern is you, as you're kind of in this tug of war, right? And you're like, something's not working and I'm really thinking about making a major change, but at the same time, not like ready to like really pull the trigger on it. I'm feeling confused or feeling stuck. When you're in that spot, what might be holding you back from just deciding with clarity, this is the change, whatever it is, whether it's making it work where I am or getting the next role, what's holding you back from like deciding with clarity and pulling the trigger is that you think that aiming for the life and the career that you actually want, aiming wholeheartedly for your A+ is kind of cringe. It feels cringe to just go for it, to go 100% towards what your ideal actually would be. This could sound like, ooh, what if I fail? Like, what if I try, but then I fail? That'll be so embarrassing. I'll feel embarrassed internally. And then I'll feel like other people are looking at me and like are judging me for like the stupid decision I made. It could also sound like, what if it's a huge waste of time? What if I like invest all this energy and like make this change? Or what if I decide to stay here and really gun for the promotion, whatever it might be, and then it doesn't work out? And I'm like, oh, what a waste of time. I should have known. I feel so stupid. I look so stupid, right? Like how cringe is it to put myself out there and really strive and really try for something? Because like, what if I flop? What if I totally like put my whole heart on the line and really give it a shot and I flop? And it's totally cringe and I look stupid and I feel like I've wasted my time. And my brain is like, you should have realized. How did you not realize ahead of time that that's what's going to happen? Stupid, dumb, right? Time waster, inefficient to have done that, right? And so to really strive and try for the actual life and career that you want for your A+ answer feels risky. It feels dangerous. It feels like putting yourself out there, even if no one is actually paying attention to you, right? Even if no one is actually looking that closely at you. you feel like you're under a microscope while you do it. You feel like people are looking at you and judging you. And it feels like you're stepping like onto stage, right? Onto a stage and making an announcement like, guys, I'm really trying. I'm going for it, right? And so it can feel cringe. Like building, that's hence the title of this podcast episode, right? Building the life and career that you actually want is cringe, right? It feels so cringe. It feels so vulnerable. It feels like you're putting yourself out there and like everyone might see you flop and your own brain might judge the crap out of you, like if you flop. And so I want to call out that thought pattern because not a lot of people realize that that's what's happening, right? As they kind of talk me through their options and they're like, well, I could do this and here's the pros and cons. And here I could do this and here's the pros and cons and here's what I'm stuck on, right? And it's a little subtle thought pattern. It's a little bit of background thinking I notice for people where I'm like, oh, are you holding yourself back from like going for your actual A+ because it feels cringe because you're afraid you might flop and then everyone will laugh at you or everyone will kind of be like, ew, they should have known. They're not very smart. Or your brain will say those things to yourself. So here's what I'm going to tell you, right? If as I talk about this, you're like, oh my gosh, that is kind of holding me back. It just feels cringe to go for what I really want. Here's what I want to tell you. Yeah, it's cringe. It's totally freaking cringe to go for it, to like put a stake in the ground and be like, this is the life I want. This is the career I want. This is what my A+ answer actually looks like. And I'm going for it wholeheartedly. I'm not holding myself back. I'm not caveating myself. I'm not like, giving myself a little hedge. I'm actually going for it. It's cringe. I agree with you. I'm not even going to try to fight you on that, right? I'm not even going to try to tell you, no, it's not. Like, it's actually really cool. Like, honestly, coolness is all about like detachment and not caring that much and like being aloof and like being above things and like trying and striving and being really earnest and like actually going for the A+. It's cringe as hell, right? It is the opposite of cool. It is totally cringe. So I agree with you. I think it's cringe, but here's what I think about cringe, right? And here's why I think being cringe is actually amazing. The only person that thinks that things are cringe, the person who has that opinion of like, oh, that thing you're doing is so cringe, is the person who's on the sidelines versus the person who's in the arena, right? People who are in the arena don't care about what people on the sidelines are saying, or they certainly understand, oh, you don't get it. You're sitting on the sidelines commentating about what's going on, commentating about the decisions I should have made, being a little armchair general, right? About the game that you're seeing unfolding in front of you. You have no idea what it takes. So I'm going to agree with you. It's cringe. It's cringe to really try. It's cringe to put a stake in the ground. It's cringe to say, here's my A+ and I'm really going to go for it. But who's that person who's saying it's cringe? So it's not cringe objectively. It's cringe according to this person who is sitting on the sidelines. I'm going to tell you a little story to kind of demonstrate what I'm talking about. I recently read a restaurant review. I went to a great restaurant in New York. It's called Ambassador's Clubhouse. It was awesome. It's a British Indian restaurant that then recently opened a like outpost in New York, and it was really amazing. And then I read a restaurant review, right, like for it, like like several weeks later, it was like a review in the New Yorker. And as I was reading this like long review about Ambassador's Clubhouse, I had this thought where I was like, when I was in college, I was an English major when I was in college. I thought about going into journalism. I was actually a huge fan of like art criticism and just like criticism in general. Not like, I mean, yes, also being snarky, but like when I say criticism, I mean like these long think pieces, right, in newspapers and magazines that sort of break down an artistic experience and say and like give someone's opinion on it. And so when I was in college, I thought criticism was like the highest form of art and the highest form of like intellectual, like thinking and intelligence and like perceiving the world and just like being really smart about stuff. Like I just thought criticism was so freaking cool. And then I had this moment as I was reading the restaurant review for Ambassador's Clubhouse after I had gotten there. And I was like, oh, it really changed. Like the, 18, 19, 20-year-old version of me would have like thought this was so cool, would have thought that their opinions were so smart. I would have laughed at all their snarky little jokes and all their little wordplay. And I would have been like, this is the pinnacle, right? To like consume something and then have a like smart take on like what you think that thing meant. And as I was reading the article recently, right, a few weeks ago, I was like, oh, you're on the sidelines. Like thinking about the critic, I was like, you are a commentator. You're a spectator. It's like, you've never worked in a restaurant. You've never opened a restaurant. You've never opened an outpost, like an international outpost of like a well-established like restaurant in another place and figured out like how to bring like all the things that you do into a new location and also make it fit in a new city. I just had this like strong impression of just like, girl, you're on the sidelines. You've never done this. Like you have no idea what it takes. You don't know what it takes to do this from the ground up. In the case of the restaurant, right, to like have a vision for the menu that like ties to your, like your upbringing and your culture, but also you're thinking about what's going to play commercially and what's there going to be demand for. Then like you as the like chef and as the executive chef, you're not like there, making every single dish yourself, and you have to like train a whole group of people. You have to set a culture, you have to set processes, and then you have to like bring that whole thing to a completely different country, and you have to break into a new city. And then, by the way, you'll have little like restaurant critics like flying around like flies, right? Like giving their little opinion about everything you did, right? And I just had this impression for this restaurant critic where I was like, you have no idea what it takes. You have not been in the arena. You've not been in the arena of like standing up a restaurant. Fine. You've been in the arena of journalism, right? That's a different thing. But I was just like, what you're doing here with your snarky little criticism and your little hot takes and your like intellectually superior, like complicated, opinions and ideas about what's happening in this restaurant. I was like, girl, you are on the sidelines. You are just commentating, spectating away, and you have no idea. You have no idea what it takes to be in the arena and to try and to actually make something happen, right? So when I say building the life and career you actually want is cringe as hell, it is cringe, but the person who thinks it's cringe is like that restaurant critic. They're sitting on the sidelines. They've just made a whole little career, a whole little hobby of just commentating. Just like, never actually putting any skin in the game, but just saying from the outside, oh yeah, they should have known. That's so dumb. How did they not see that coming? Wow, what a waste of time. I would never do that. And it's like, wow, you have no idea. You have no idea what it actually takes. And so I want you to think about that person in the arena, right, versus the person in the sidelines, and to realize that little voice in you that says, oh, really trying, really striving, it feels cringe, it feels vulnerable. What if I flop? What if I fail? What is a waste of time? What if I look totally stupid? I just want you to recognize that that voice is not the objective voice of reason. It's not the objective voice of truth. That voice is the person sitting on the sidelines, right? That's a voice that you've internalized. That's a spectator, right? That is an armchair general. That is someone sitting on the side who has never risked a goddamn thing in their life. And they're just like having a little fun commentating. And that's not the person I admire, right? The person I admire, the person I think has the most courage and the most grit is the person in the arena. The person who is like, I am going to freaking try. Right. I know all little spectators and commentators will have all their opinions, but they have no idea what they're talking about. They don't know what it takes. They don't know how hard it is. They don't know the true depth of the challenges that you face. And so the person I have the most admiration for, the person I think is so courageous, so smart, so brave, and personally the person that I'm like, hey, I want to hear from you. I don't want to hear from the critic. Like, I really want to hear from you, is the person in the arena. That's who I aspire to be. That's whose opinion I want to hear, if that makes sense, right? Like, as much as my brain will generate the voice of the critic and the voice of the sideline commentator, as long as you have that awareness of like, oh, no, that part of me that's afraid of being cringe, that's just the sideline commentator talking. That's not who I care about. Like, I care about the people in the arena. I want to be one of those people in the arena. And that's whose opinion I actually care about. Because the people who are actually in the arena, they don't think this stuff is cringe. They're like, oh, I know. It's really hard. It's really hard. You're doing an amazing job. Here's something I learned. Here's something that might help you. But they have so much baseline respect and admiration for striving and for trying, because they know how hard it is and they know what it takes. And they have admiration for anyone who even gives it a shot, because it is so hard and it is so vulnerable. It also reminds me a little bit, I've been watching a lot of World Cup soccer because I get really into soccer every 4 years and then forget about it. So you end up hearing a lot of like sports commentary, right? Like while you're listening to soccer. And I have a very similar, I know nothing about soccer, right? So I like barely, like, I'm like, oh, the ball went into the net, but I don't have any like tactical analysis of these games, right? So the commentary is helpful because I like, at least they're offering some like analysis of what's going on because I don't have the like full comprehension. But at the same time, I have that same feeling as I'm listening to the sports commentators. And I'm just like, do you know what it takes? And I literally went digging on the internet for this. I was looking for like, basically, how hard is it actually to be a professional soccer player, right? Like, how hard is it actually to be one of these guys? Like, how good are they? Because like everyone on the soccer field is a professional soccer player. So you don't have any calibration of like how hard they're working and like what it actually takes. And I found a great YouTube video that basically breaks down like, hey, this is much harder than you think it is. And if you're like a casual like Sunday soccer league player who's like armchair commentating on the games, being like, why did you not just do that? He was just like, this is the guy in the video was like, no. Let me like break down for you a lot along like 5 different variables, like why this is so much harder than you think. And to me, the most compelling part, he had some snippets of like basically player cam, right? So it's like the players like have a camera strapped to their forehead, so you can actually see like what they're dealing with, like as the ball is getting passed to them, and then as they're having to like make micro moment decisions about what to do. And that's where it really came home to me, was I was like, oh, the game is moving very fast. There are many variables all happening at once, and you have a split second to make these decisions, and then your technical skills better be impeccable. You better be able to get the ball where you want it to go while like 17 different things are happening. So I just give that as another example, right? Of like, it's so easy. Like a lot of times who has the microphone is the critic, right? Like the soccer players are not like commentating on games. And I know that there's like a bunch of like former soccer players that do commentate. But like what ends up happening is the person with the platform, the person with the microphone, the person whose voice you hear the most is the sideline commentator, because the people in the arena are too busy in the fight, right? They're building, they're striving, they're trying to achieve the actual things, and they just don't have time to like get on the microphone and like, you know, rhapsodize and like wax poetic about what it takes. I always like, I feel very lucky when someone who's in the arena gives an interview, writes a book, like, you know, offers any kind of insight. As I've been like digging through World Cup commentary, I've been like, where are the players? I just want to hear from the players. I don't really want to hear from the commentators, because those are the people who know like what it actually takes, and who, in my opinion, have like real insight to offer. But that's what I have the most courage and admiration for, right? But I want you to know the reason that like critic's voice is so loud in your head. It's not because you're crazy. It's not because you're self-sabotaging or have low self-confidence or any of those things, right? The reason that voice is in your head is that's the voice we hear all the time, right? Like people tend to want ways to make sense of what's going on, right? To make sense of a movie, to make sense of a restaurant experience, to make sense of a game, right? So there's demand for commentators, there's demand for critics. And so you'll hear all those voices. Even when I was at Harvard Business School, right? We did these like case studies. We're just commentating. We're just get a bunch of like information, and then we're commentating on the sidelines, right? What would we have done? And it's a good learning experience, right? But like you hear the voice of the critic and the voice of the sideline commentator. I don't even want to call them the critic. I want to call them the sideline commentator, because I feel like that kind of puts them in their place and like accurately describes what they're doing. You hear the voice of the sideline commentator constantly, right? Because people don't want to tend to just like take in a raw experience and then come up with their own opinion. It's just taxing, right? Like I also don't want to do that for every single thing that I'm taking in. It's helpful to have somebody just like give me an interpretation so I can kind of make sense of the experience. There's demand, right, for that. But that also means that you are going to hear the voice of the sideline commentator everywhere, all the time, constantly. And then you're going to internalize that voice, right? Any voice you hear a lot all the time, you're going to internalize it. And your brain is going to be like, ooh, well, what would that person say in response to my situation, or in response to my decision, or if I were to make this call, right? So that's why you've internalized the voice of the sideline commentator. And you don't tend to hear the voice of the person in the arena as much, right? Occasionally that person will like write a book or do an interview or whatever it might be, but mostly they're working. They're working, they're striving, they're achieving, they're trying to win. They don't have time until like talk about it. So you hear their voice much less. But I just want you to know, like when you feel that feeling of like, what if it's cringe? What if I flop? What if this is stupid? What if I fail? What if I waste my time, right? When all those voices come in, then that hold you back from taking your A+ next step, from even striving for your A+ next step. I just want you to know, oh, that's the voice of the sideline commentator. That's the voice of like the person who's like kicking their feet up, watching the game and commentating what they should be doing. That's the voice of the restaurant critic who has never worked a single day in a kitchen, but is like, here's what I think about this food that you just gave me, right? Serve a purpose and it's all good. But for you to know, like, do I want that voice to guide me? Or do I want the voice of the person in the arena to guide me? Do I want to be the sideline commentator of my own life? Or do I want to be the person who's in the arena, who is striving, who is trying, who has courage and grit and like goes for it? Personally, that's why I have the most admiration and respect for. And I think the other reason that it's really worth it to be the person in the arena and to strive and try and to look freaking cringe in the eyes of the commentators, right? I want to talk about meaningless struggle versus meaningful struggle, right? I cannot give you a life without struggle. Even the best coaching and therapizing and meditation and spiritual practices and yoga and breath work, like every single modality, right? Nothing can give you a life without struggle. Struggle is part of the human existence. But I actually don't think it's the struggle that kills you. I don't think it's the struggle that wears you down or creates the friction or burns you out or any of those things. I think what kills you is meaningless struggle. when the struggle doesn't make sense, when the struggle is like for the sake of things that you don't care about, right? When the struggle is solving for variables that are not your top priority variables, when the struggle is trying to solve for the opinions of people whose opinions you actually don't care that much about, meaningless struggle is what will kill you. Right? That's when you'll feel like, why am I doing this? Something's not working. I'm burning out. What is the point of this? I just want to go on vacation and never come back. Right? So struggle is not a problem, but meaningless struggle is a problem. And I think the meaningless struggle is avoiding being cringe. I think the meaningless struggle is trying to make the sideline commentator say something really nice about you, when the sideline commentator's whole job is to have a snarky hot take. Right. And frankly, if you're a sideline commentator, just saying this person's amazing, they're doing a great job, doesn't get that much traction. Right. And so I think the meaningless struggle is trying to avoid cringe, avoid flopping, avoid failure, and try to look good in the eyes of the sideline commentators. And I think the meaningful struggle is getting in the arena. I think the meaningful struggle is saying, here's my A+ answer. Here's what I want my life to actually look like. Here's what I want my career to actually look like. And I am going to try. I'm going to put a stake in the ground and I'm going to try, because even when you inevitably struggle, you're going to struggle either way, right? You're going to struggle aiming for the B+, you're going to struggle while you're giving up, and you're going to struggle aiming for the A+, right? They're all struggles. But I think aiming for the A+, being in the arena, taking the commentator's voice out of your head and deliberately being like, okay, but what would someone in the arena say? That's who I want to be. That is, all of that is meaningful struggles. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, right? I'm not saying you're going to have a gliding, beautiful time. It's just going to be like a vacation. You're just going to coast all the way to the end. Absolutely. It's going to be a struggle. There's going to be challenges, obstacles. And you are going to like have to dig deep to figure these things out. But I'm saying your choice is not between struggle and no struggle. Your choice is between meaningful struggle and meaningless struggle. And I think you might be surprised to realize meaningful struggle is actually awesome. It gives you meaning, it gives you purpose, it gives you fulfillment, it gives you satisfaction. Meaningful struggle is actually a way to have a deep sense of like happiness, but I really think like satisfaction and fulfillment are the right words to describe, and meaning, right, are the right words to describe how that feels. Meaningless struggle just burns you out and feels like crap and feels meaningless, right? And like no struggle, just gliding perfectly through life doesn't feel that great either, because your brain is a problem-solving machine and it wants to solve problems. And so if it doesn't have struggle, it just makes up struggle and then like solves those problems instead. I think about like people that are on, I don't watch a lot of like reality TV shows, but if you think about like reality TV shows with people who are like really rich and they just have like no problems and they just create like random cat fights like amongst each other, and you're just like, oh, like she threw a party and then she didn't invite me and now I'm mad at her. And you're like, what's happening? Right? That is someone who has very little struggle in their lives. And then their brain just manufactures struggle because it actually feels very uncomfortable to not have a problem to be working on. Our brains are problem-solving machines. So I actually think the like no struggle landscape, right? The no struggle option actually feels pretty empty and hollow. And what people end up doing is just creating struggle to like fill in the gap. The meaningless struggle, right, feels awful and burns you out and feels like, what is the point? Why am I even doing this? Like, who even owns my life? Like, what am I even solving for? And the meaningful struggle, I actually think is the sweet spot, right? I actually think that's where you want to be, where you're like, I have decided this is my A+. I've gotten clarity on it and I'm actually going to go for it. And yeah, it's scary and it's vulnerable and I'm going to face challenges and I might get knocked down, but like, this is where the like life is actually lived. I want to be the person in the arena. I want to be the one who is striving. And I want to be that person that I think is courageous and I have respect and admiration for. So that's why, yes, building the life and the career that you actually want, putting a stake in the ground and being like, this is my actual A+ answer. This is what I would like my life to look like. This is what I'd like my career to look like. This is what my ideal would be. Putting that stake in the ground and then actually trying to go for it, it's cringe. Your brain might be thinking it's cringe and that's why I don't want to do it. And I'm telling you, yeah, it's 100% cringe. I'm totally with you. It's not cool, right? It's not aloof. It's not detached. It's super earnest. It's super try hard. It's super cringe. But I actually think that's actually really cool. Because I think the only people that really think it's cringe are those sideline commentators. And I don't think you want to live your life. I think you want to make all your decisions based on what the sideline commentators would say. That's the meaningless struggle. And I think the meaningful struggle is to say, let me get in the arena. Let me actually try. And by the way, you're going to find a lot more people who are also in the arena who have a lot of respect and admiration for what you're doing. And you're going to realize it's a way more fun way to live your life, is actually striving and actually trying. So let me give you the first step to actually building the life and career that you want. The first step is to come and talk to me. book a free career audit. The link is in the episode description. And what we're going to do in the hour that we spend together, we are going to figure out what is your actual A plus, right? If you're like, I don't even know what that would be, don't worry. I have the right questions to ask you. I can pull it out of you. I have secret tools that I love to use, but we're going to pull out of you what is your actual A plus. We're also going to understand where are you now relative to that A plus, right? What are the size of the gaps? What are the things that aren't working? And I'm going to give you a plan for closing the gaps, right? I'm going to tell you, okay, if you're actually going to strive for this, if you're going to get in the arena and really try, right? This is what I suggest that you do. And we'll also talk about whether me and you working together could help accelerate closing those gaps and help you get to that A plus sooner, faster, easier, right? With less pain. And I just want to tell you, right, like I'm not a sideline commentator. When I work with my clients, I'm not just like sitting in my little armchair being like, you should do this or that differently, right? I am such a supporter of the people in the arena. I am in the arena myself in building my own business and doing what I'm doing and putting myself out there constantly on social media and on my podcast and all those things. I'm very aware that people might think I'm cringe, but I'm like, I'm in the arena. I got to strive. I got to try. I care about the opinions of other people that are in the arena, and I just don't care that much about the sideline commentators, but I'm with you. I'm in my own arena. I get into it every single day. And I am someone who will support you and cheerlead you and literally coach you, right? As you are in your arena. And I'm going to help you like internalize that voice, right? Internalize the voice of the supporter and the cheerleader and the coach and to disinternalize, right? Get rid of that voice of the sideline commentator. Because I don't think they're the best person to drive all your decision making. So come talk to me. That is your first step. We're going to define your A plus. We're going to understand where you stand right now. We're going to make a plan to close the gaps. You are going to feel so much better. You're going to feel so much clearer. You're going to have a sense of relief because you'll understand why the gaps are there and what you should do about them. But most importantly, you're going to like really take that first step towards being the person in the arena and actually trying versus being the person who's like hanging out on the sidelines, afraid of what the commentator might say, and then resigning yourself to a life that's not your A plus and feeling that meaningless struggle and being like, oh, what is even the point of this? All right, come talk to me, book your free career audit, and I can't wait to chat. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Aligned Ambition podcast. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already and share this podcast with anyone you know that you think could use it. If you'd like to explore working together in a one-on-one coaching engagement with me, book a free consult call at poojavcoaching.com/contact. You can grab that link in the episode description. And if you have any questions, thoughts, or topics you want me to cover in this podcast, shoot me an email at pooja@poojavcoaching.com. You can grab that in the episode description too. Talk to you soon.